All right, everyone, it's 10 a.m., so I think we can get started with our webinar. Today we have a presentation by Rafael Jimenez, who is the ELIXIR Chief Technical Officer. He is a biologist and a computer scientist specialized in bioinformatics services and technical coordination. He enjoys projects related to data integration, visualization, best practices, and reusability. He has experience coordinating technical projects, developing technical strategies, delivering services, leading software development, and providing training. So let's welcome him to the webinar.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth was mentioning to me that you can ask questions at any time, and I am happy with that. I think Elizabeth will help me with the moderation. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you to the bioCADDIE team to give me this opportunity to introduce ELIXIR and to look for for potential synergies. And also welcome to all of you that are not bioCADDIE and are bioCADDIE friends. So thank you for the introduction, Elizabeth. I'm the ELIXIR Chief Technical Officer, Technical Coordinator, and I think my role is to have an overview of the technical activities that we have in ELIXIR. I also coordinate a few technical projects, and I try to facilitate technical activities within ELIXIR. So when we were talking about this webinar, something that we thought it was interesting is to give an overview of ELIXIR, and this is a little bit about the organization of ELIXIR that will help us to understand the technical activities of ELIXIR, and also those technical activities that are related to the work that is happening in bioCADDIE. So I must say I did really enjoy reading a lot about bioCADDIE. So I found very interesting the analogy that bioCADDIE is using to introduce the project. So you have the caddy that helps basically the golf player, and in the same way bioCADDIE is basically trying to support to help to provide services, tools to the data producers, to the data consumers, as well as the data repositories. So when I was basically looking at this information, I picture this picture that you have in front of you, and it's basically the caddy that is basically the people providing the services and providing the services to the golf player, in this case, the scientists or researchers. So from ELIXIR, we feel very aligned with that caddy. So when I think about services, I think we still have a lot to do. And this is another analogy for me, and it's how services are provided, for instance, in Nigeria. So I think we are kind of effective providing services. Like the Nigerians, they manage to provide electricity to the business, to the homes, but they are not very efficient. So I think there's a lot that we can do. So you can see in this picture, and you can guess that this is not very sustainable, that it's very individualist, and that there is no much coordination. So I think what we aim to do, and I think this is something, an effort that happens within bioCADDIE, BD2K, but also ELIXIR, is to try to get something more professional services and infrastructure like this electricity infrastructure that is more coordinated and something that could cater better for our users. So I think it's trivial to say that probably the way to go to this infrastructure is through collaboration, through building community, and through support and commitment. But actually, it's not that trivial. I think, for instance, when we talk about collaboration and support, I think we're talking about services. But it's not easy because services basically follow the same rule than science. So, for instance, in science, scientific projects are basically supported by grants that last for 4 years, for 5 years. And I think services do not follow the same pattern. I think services are not just for 4 years. Actually, services should be for a bit longer. So I think something that is happening is that services are a little bit undermined. And also you see how science works normally because most of the scientific projects are based on grants. There's a lot of competition, and there is more competition than collaboration. And I think in services should be different, should be more collaboration than competition. So I think this kind of justifies efforts like bioCADDIE, and efforts like ELIXIR that tries to build sustainable services that try to build on top of collaborations. So I think this for me is something that convinced me and actually makes me happy to work for ELIXIR. ELIXIR is a European distributed research infrastructure here in Europe, and is for biological research. So the aim of ELIXIR is to provide data services, services to sustain, to enable, to enhance research, biological science. So ELIXIR is participated by major bioinformatics providers in Europe. So we have around 130 service providers that are organized in nodes. So these service providers are supported by the member states. So the member states basically are providing funding to these ELIXIR nodes, and the idea is basically to have this kind of collaboration and also networking that links the nodes with the national centers with EMBL, EBI, the European Bioinformatics Institute. So as I was saying before, something that is important is that collaboration, the support. So the collaboration is happening through ELIXIR, so the collaboration of major service providers, and the support is happening through the European member states. So the services that we have in ELIXIR are basically delivered through ELIXIR nodes. So there's a node per member state, and additionally we have an additional node that is EMBL, EBI. And these nodes basically provide services based on their priorities, their strengths. So you can see there different images. I think you can see my mouse. Basically these are posters that were created based on the node proposals of the different nodes. So basically the nodes with the node proposals, they basically show what services they want to bring forward for the community. And you can see, for instance, the Norwegians, they are focused on marine metagenomics. You can see the Swedish, they focus on protein immunohistochemistry. So UK at the moment, for instance, it focuses quite a lot on training. So different nodes, different priorities, different.
He was working.
Hello.
Helping out with a grant over at the School of Nursing.
Hello. Hi, Elizabeth. If you could help me to moderate and mute, please.
Yes. Everyone, please try to mute your line if possible. Otherwise, I'll have to mute you.
Yeah, there was. You know what it was. Well, yeah, sort of. EPA.
So the services are delivered through the ELIXIR nodes, and the hub basically got the role of coordination and of technical activities in general. So all the activities that happen within ELIXIR are kind of described in the ELIXIR program. So the ELIXIR program describes what are the goals of ELIXIR and also what is the direction of the activities of ELIXIR. So you see the program, you will see that most of the activities are around 5 major topics. So one is data, and it's mainly the sustainability of core resources, core data, and the work of metrics, monitoring, and quality. Standards on top of the data for the integration and interoperability of data and services. And these are formats, ontologies, minimum information guidelines, and also tools on top of the standards, on top of the data, for access, searching, and analyzing data. And the tools, the data, and the standards are on top of a compute infrastructure. So the idea is to be able to provide storage, network, computing, access to the data. And of course, one of the most important components, the training, to be able to use all these 4 components. So the technical activities, this is how I see the technical activities in ELIXIR. So we have like 3 major areas, and this is divided by how they are driven or how they are funded. So we have the node activities. So these are basically technical activities that are prioritized by nodes, and also we have activities that are driven by the ELIXIR hub that does the coordination, and we have many activities that are within these platforms. So these platforms basically are, I will explain a little bit more about this, but basically are these areas, and basically what we did is to look at the different tasks that are within ELIXIR projects and try to align those into platforms. But yes, these are ELIXIR projects that are trying to deliver the ELIXIR program at the European level. So all these technical activities are implemented by ELIXIR service providers. So this is a timeline of what has been happening in ELIXIR. At the moment, we are in a service deployment phase. So you can see that in the past, we have a preparatory phase. So this preparatory phase was funded by the European Union, and it was to prepare ELIXIR and to try to come up with the scientific program and an agreement on how to collaborate the different ELIXIR nodes. We have funding as well from the nodes. Funding as well comes from the hub. So the hub has been funding pilots that have been like small projects to be able to test technologies and try to push forward some priority activities. So these pilots now are not pilots anymore because are not tests. So these pilots are more implementations, and that's the reason why we call it implementation studies. And we also get funding from different projects like Biomed Bridges that finished last year, and now COBEL that is a kind of follow-up of Biomed Bridges. So one of the important grants that we have is Accelerate, and I will be talking a little more about Accelerate later, but it's one of the grants that is funding ELIXIR and is helping to implement the ELIXIR program. So these are a list of ELIXIR activities. Actually, I cannot spend much time, so there are many activities. I highlighted some of them that I thought they are relevant for bioCADDIE. So for instance, we had a pilot about interoperability of protein resources, and this was basically about having common query interfaces among different resources, protein resources. So this was UniProt, PRIDE, that is protein identifications, and HPA, that is protein immunohistochemistry, basically antibodies. We had another one about connecting national proteomics repositories, so repositories that are organized in an institutional level, and afterwards submit the data to a national level, and afterwards submit data to an archive, and what is important to have replication of data. So we had another one that was about rare disease, and I will explain a little more this in detail because this was a pilot to be able to push forward one of our use cases in Accelerate. So this was about trying to combine data from biobanks, genomic resources like EGA and rare disease portals. So we had as well, and this is undergoing, the ELIXIR Beacon project, and this was a collaboration with the Global Alliance, and this was to push forward the beacons that basically allows and help people to be able to query for variants, that genomics variants that distributed in different resources. And we are going to start soon a new implementation study that is a collaboration with the Global Alliance that is around beacons, but also about how to manage data by projects that are funded as well by European grants. So that was a little bit about hub activities. So you want to know more about any of this, please feel free to contact me, and I will put you in contact with the right person. So technical activities from the nodes. So as I was saying before, the nodes provide services, and these services are described in node proposals that are available in the ELIXIR website. And some of these nodes basically will come up with services that it will enter into something called service delivery plans, and I will explain briefly in a few seconds. So here are the node proposals that I showed before. So these are the services that are provided by ELIXIR nodes. So we have here the node proposals, and some of these services will manage to get into service delivery plans. So I think one of the ideas that we have is that we have existing services in ELIXIR, but something that we want to do is to raise the quality of these services and also to raise the sustainability of the services. So something that we are coming with ELIXIR is with technical strategies, best practices, and also a quality control to be able to improve our services. So some of the services that come from the nodes will be proposed as a core resource or named resource, and these services will basically be compliant with all these strategies, best practices, and quality control. So let me talk a little bit more about the platforms. So we have different projects that are contributing to the platforms. So the platforms, we have 5 main platforms, and these are these are basically aligned to the main areas of ELIXIR. So one is data, and something that the data cares about, the data platform cares about, is about metrics monitoring, data lifecycle, and data curation. The tools, as you might know, is working a lot on a service registry for the registration of tools, benchmarking and workflows. Interoperability is working on standards, identity, and FAIR. We'll talk a little bit more about FAIR later. The compute platform about data transfer, cloud, and authentication authorization services, and the training about the training portal. So these are few examples of some of the activities, and I will present some of them that are more relevant for bioCADDIE. So you can see here the colors. So we have the brown, the orange. So this try to show that in the platforms the activities are happening around these areas, but also in the nodes. Here in the nodes below, you can see that are nodes that they have a strong bias to one of these areas. So, for instance, at the moment, the UK is more probably yellow because they have more technical activities related to training, and maybe Finland is more biased to compute. Something that the platforms are trying to do is to come up with strategies that can be applied to the ELIXIR nodes. So this is an example of the compute platform technical strategy. So something that we are trying to do in Accelerate is to do more technical strategy and integration, trying to reduce services that already exist. So in the red you have things that we are planning to do, and in blue you have things that we are planning to reduce or do through external funding. We are doing quite a lot of things related to the compute, but just to focus on one of them, for instance, the authentication and authorization infrastructure. You can see here that for each of these squares that I showed before, we have a strategy. So this is the AI strategy. I will not say much about this. So you can see here that on top we have services, and we rely on 16 services, and we provide basically we try to provide an authentication authorization service for all these services. So we rely on external authentication services that already exist, like EduGain, and common identity provider authentication, like for instance we could use Google for authenticating into different services. And what ELIXIR is trying to do is to provide this infrastructure where basically we can link through the ID proxy different institutional IDs with other IDs. And we are also using something that is called REMS, and we are using this for the control access of data sets. So something that is worth saying as well is that, for instance, something that we are doing is that we are grouping identities into groups. So this helps us to basically access services through group management. So a lot of things happening within compute, but I will not talk much about this because I think it's not probably of much interest of bioCADDIE. So I think in all the platforms, something that we are trying to come up with is a kind of strategy document, and this is the one that the compute platform is working on. The interoperability platform. So I think something is important for the interoperability platform is the description of data sets, content, and interfaces, and using common schemas, self-describing metadata and mappings, and well, I think for you can see the box on the right at the bottom. I think something that is important for us is data sets, but I think we shouldn't forget about what we call biological entries, or biological knowledge bases. So experimental data is data that normally end up in archives, and from this experimental data we can come up with evidences that can build knowledge and entries like protein entries or gene entries. So I think these two different type of entries are different, the data sets and biological entries, and we try to cater for both of them. Something that we are doing in the interoperability platform is to build on existing work, and you can see there some existing efforts and as well as publications. So we try to rely as much as possible on existing efforts. So this is a slide that shows a roadmap of services. So you can see that some of the services are related to identifiers, identifier mapping, identifier resolution, identified citation. We are also looking at searching ontologies, linked data, metadata for data sets, and so on. I think the interoperability backbone, something that is trying to do, and I think is right, is to try to base is the strategy in use cases. So we have a few use cases in ELIXIR and also in Corbel, and we are trying to provide first services for those use cases, so use case oriented. So something that we are doing is to collaborate as much as we can with external efforts. So bioCADDIE, BD2K is one of them, FOSS11, the Global Alliance, RDA Alliance. And we have 4 main group of activities that are based on metadata standards, services, identifiers, and best practices. And we have training that is, well, I wouldn't say that it's training, are more hackathons, bring your own data hackathons that try to bring the expertise of people that have experience on services and interoperability, and also the people that have the need to do the analysis or to get something from the data. So these are some of the services that we are trying to work on. So just to mention some of them, like the standards catalog of the ontology services, I will mention a bit few of them now based on the priorities of this year. So the interoperability backbone or the platform so have these main 4 groups and also these services. You can see who are responsible of these services. I just put this for your information so you know who to contact in case that you want to know more about any of these services. So these are the activities in 2016. Something that we are doing is to survey, try to coordinate and find more information about our use cases. I will present the use cases in a minute. In the identifiers area, we are trying to provide a kind of review of what is needed in ELIXIR for identifiers. So this is identifiers primer. We are also evaluating, or we are going to evaluate the identifiers.doc resolution service. We are also reviewing the needs of use cases, and also we are looking at who are the authorities of identities within the use cases. We are working with FOSS11 and BD2K as well on how to use identifiers and metadata for citation. And also we hope that this year we'll come up with a strategy for identifiers for ELIXIR. So bring your own data hackathons will happen during the whole year, and basically we'll try to help the different areas of interest within the interoperability platform. So these are more activities for the standards catalog. So biosharing is basically doing an evaluation of user needs, and I will say a little bit more about that later. And also it will work on the integration with the biotools, that is the ELIXIR service registry. We are also working, or we will be working on a proposal for dataset profiles. And in best practices, we are already writing a paper about linked data best practices, and we will be working on a roadmap for best practices for interoperability. For the services, something that we will be doing is we will be looking at the different use cases and registering all the services related to interoperability into the service registry. And we'll be releasing a beta release of the semantic tool components, and these are basically related to ontology mapping and ontology discovery. And also we will be working on a draft plan for service certification. Something so more bring your own data hackathons, so different ones about workflows, data ontology, and something that we are planning as well is to have a kind of biohackathon very similar to the Japanese one, but at the European level. So this slide is more for your information of the structure of the interoperability platform. So Carol Goebel and Helen Parkinson are managing the platform, and also we have interactions with use cases, and here the names and the people that we are interacting with. Okay, so since Susanna sent me, I was asking the interoperability platform for feedback. Susanna sent me some feedback and information about biosharing, and also I got some more from other groups. So I will be presenting this. So you know that we have a huge landscape of standards, more than 100 standards, formats, ontologies, information guidelines. So biosharing is a registry, not just of standards, but also policies and databases. And we in ELIXIR, we are using biosharing as a catalog of standards. And I think something that biosharing is doing very well is the linkage of those standards with databases, and soon as well with tools through the tools registry. So biosharing has been very active. So they conducted a survey to assess user needs. They got over 500 replies. So I think that's quite impressive. And so they will be writing a report about those user needs based on the answers from the survey. And also they will create a roadmap that will be based on the feedback that we are collecting through those surveys. So something worth mentioning is, and this is Susanna wrote this, is the engagement of biosharing in the Standard Coordinating Center, BD2K Standard Coordinating Center, that I guess is happening at the moment. So I actually don't know much about this. And yes, and something important is that also biosharing is quite engaged in BD2K, in bioCADDIE, as you know, in the selection and usage of standards. So a little bit about FAIR. I don't know if you heard this word before, but basically this is a principle that is being used for data repositories, and is that the repositories of the data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So I think when I wanted to explain this properly, and I found this slide from my colleague Luis, and I think this kind of helped me a lot to explain or to understand myself what is FAIR. So you can see that we have different types of data, and this is basically data in raw format. So this data can be processed, and we can have processed data. But processed data doesn't mean that it's easy to integrate or to interoperate. So what FAIR is trying to do is to help in this transformation and to provide this FAIR data that is easy to integrate and afterwards to do analysis. So I think the majority of the FAIR services, I would say, that are in between these two boxes, and it's trying basically to make data easy to share. So I don't have. So I got from Luis something like 30 slides. I was not going to present the 30 slides, but I thought this slide was quite good. So you can see here the FAIR data protocol that is here in the middle, and it's kind of the connection between the applications and the data resources. So the data protocol is like a kind of minimum standards that the applications and the resources understand, and this is what it helps the connection of different data and applications. So FAIR is developing different applications that basically helps to that kind of interoperability, and also is helping the resources to be more fair, or to follow the FAIR principles. Okay, so that was about about interoperability. Let me explain a little bit more about the data platform. Actually, not much. I just have one slide. So actually, the data platform is doing quite a lot, but just looking at what it could be relevant for bioCADDIE, I thought this was a good summary. So the data platform is working on the identification of ELIXIR services and core resources. So those resources that are super important for our users, and resources that need to be sustained, and the strategies for sustainability of those resources. So for that, something that we are doing, or the platform is doing, is to look at the metrics and quality criteria. So they are working on this at the moment, and I think this will help us to identify these services, and also to work on the life cycle of the different data resources. Something else that the data platform is doing is working on sustainability of curated resources, and they are doing that through literature data integration and resources cross-linking. Okay. So no questions so far?
Actually, we do have a question that just popped up in the chat a few minutes ago.
Okay.
Someone wants to know, what are your goals for the standards?
What are the goals for the standards?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's a very generic question. Let me see if I. So I guess is that referring to biosharing, or is that referring to, because standards is many things. I don't know if it could be more specific, the question. So let me say one thing. I think the data platform tries to facilitate the interoperability. It doesn't try to do the interoperability. So I think something that we don't want to do is to define the standards. We want to facilitate the definition of those standards. And I don't know if that answers the question. Susanna is here, and Susanna is part of the interoperability platform. So I welcome her as well to say something.
I think you said it all. The plan is not to recreate a new standard, but is to map them, understand who used them, the metrics of their use, and guide other people to reuse what exists and flag what's missing, the gaps and potential overlaps and harmonization.
Thank you, Susanna.
We have a clarification in the chat also. The biosharing is the registry of standards?
Yes, biosharing is the registry of standards. And I think much more than that, yes. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so if there are no more questions, I will continue. So the tools platform, they are focusing on the tools and data services registry. So this is a registry of software and data repositories. So they are providing query interface for users to find tools, but they are doing much more than that. I think this effort is especially important and is very valuable because many information that is not just ELIXIR resources, but any information about any software or any data is properly curated. So curated normally by the resource providers, but also by the tools platform. So I don't remember how many resources we have, but I think it's an interesting number. I think something that the tools platform tries to do is to link with the data platform. So the data platform is building the metrics for data resources to define quality. So these metrics will be linked with the tools registry. And something that we are doing as well, we are doing the benchmarking of tools. So the benchmarking is mainly a functional benchmarking, trying to compare different tools performing against similar problems. So the information that comes from the benchmarking and the monitoring also will be present in the tools and data registry. Yes, I think a part of the plans of the tools and data registry is to facilitate as well the work of workflows, like it could be, for instance, Galaxy, to be able to use different services that could be provided by the tools and data service registry. This is an example of the interface, but as I was saying, this is much more than the interface. I think something interesting that I saw recently, the tools registry is providing this graphical interface, but also an API. And I realized that there are other resources, like there's an NIH BD2K service that is called Aztec. Is basically pulling information from the tools registry and is provided a different view. So I think that's fantastic. Yes. So you can see here there is a search, and there are in total at the moment, when I was querying at that moment, there were 2,231 entries. So a very complete registry and something that we try to curate as much as possible. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about Accelerate, and Accelerate is one of the main projects that is providing funding to implement the ELIXIR program, and also we'll be talking about the Accelerate use cases. So Accelerate, it was Horizon 2020 grant. This is a European grant, so it was submitted in January 2015, awarded in May, and something that started in September 2015. So actually, it was just at the end of the last year that we started to have kickoff, and we started the project. But since ELIXIR started much earlier, I think most of the activities were very well prepared, and I think that's the reason why we started very soon to produce and implement many services. The goal of Accelerate is to implement the ELIXIR scientific program, to engage with user communities, to integrate the ELIXIR nodes, and also to coordinate in general the distributed infrastructure. So this is the chart that we use to introduce Accelerate. You can see that this yellow part is the core of Accelerate, and is based on the 5 main areas, or the 4 main areas that I mentioned before, that are the platforms. So we have data, interoperability, compute, tools, and benchmarking that are part of tools. We have training, supporting Accelerate, as well as node capacity building, and operations, and outreach, and industry. So we have here the different use cases on the top and below. So we have use cases below that are related more to the submission of data. And this is like the genomics, the plant genomics and phenotypic data, and as well the human access control data. And on top we have use cases that are related to marine metagenomics and to rare disease that are more related to the dissemination of data. So these are the 4 use cases summarized in pretty pictures. So I will briefly go through these pictures. I was thinking just to mention the rare disease and the human access control data, but actually looking at marine metagenomics and plant genomics, I think it's very relevant for bioCADDIE, because after looking at the white paper of bioCADDIE, I realized that some of the use cases described in bioCADDIE are kind of aligned with this, so I will mention them as well. So this is the marine metagenomics use case. In this use case, we have 3 different stakeholders. So we have the people that produce the data, the scientists that wants to consume the data through a graphical user interface, and the bioinformaticians that wants to do heavy analysis, maybe in the cloud. So the data producer, the idea is that it basically submits the data to the normal archives, and the marine metagenomics basically imports the data that is related to marine data. So the marine metagenomics will be connected to a pipeline to be able to do analysis. This is MGP. And the idea is to provide a cloud resource that the users can use to be able to use the tools provided by Envol EBI, So something that we realized is that, well, so the data is quite heavy, and the data also needs to be distributed into other nodes. So the Norwegians also are working a lot with metagenomics, and they want to have a replica of that data. So something that we are exploring is how to do that efficient replication of data. And they have different tools to be able to do the analysis of metagenomics information, and I think that's great. So they have something that is called MetaPipe, and also they want to provide the same access through the cloud, and also to allow the scientists to be able to browse information that comes from the analysis of both resources. So this is the use case of marine metagenomics, a very interesting use case. So you can see that there is a lot here related to compute, but also interoperability. So this is the use case for plants, genomics and phenotypic data. So in this case, let me see. I guess you see my mouse. I hope that you see my mouse. So we have probably tens or hundreds of databases providing plant genomics and phenotypic data. And each database at the end, they have their own data model, their own interface, and the idea is that they can agree on using a common query interface, or to provide the data in a standardized index. So this is what is called here shard, or implementing shard. So by having this kind of common index or common query interfaces, then we can integrate all that data into a search engine to be able to access all this data. So through the access of the ELIXIR service registry, we'll be able to find all these plant genomics phenotypic resources. Something that is additional to this use case is that if the user finds the data, afterwards the idea is that it can use this retrieval engine, where basically the data is replicated into a cloud service or a computational services for further analysis, and the user can get information about that analysis. So this is the rare disease use case. So I think this is very interesting as well. As you know, there are many biobanks, at least there are hundreds in Europe, sure that a lot in the States, and probably thousands in the world. So all of them have different user interfaces. So something that we are trying to do is to federate the interfaces of these biobanks, and to be able to integrate all the metadata information, and to provide APIs. And the same thing is happening with genomic data. So EGA is a database that is used for collecting, submitting data, genomic phenotypic data. And also we have patient or information that is distributed as well in different databases. So something that we are trying to do is to create an interface, or to create a federation for each of them. And actually what it makes sense and what makes things interesting is to be able to combine biobank data with genomic studies with patient data. And this is what we are trying to do with the ELIXIR Rare Disease portal. So you can see here that there is an AI component, and this is very important, and probably something that makes the use case more difficult, and is that, of course, some of the data is private and needs control access to be able to access some of the data. So that was the rare disease. So this is the human access control data. So the title is Framework for Secure Archiving, Dissemination, Analysis of Human Access Control Data, enabling biobanks, cohorts, and local resource services to leverage the EGA. Okay, so let me explain this with this pretty picture. So we have people basically creating experiments, data, genome, phenome data. So this information can end up in the EGA. So EGA is, if you don't know, is a database that collects data, and is a project collaborated by EBI and CRG in Barcelona. So something that we realize is that a centralized repository is not good enough, and something that we are working on is on local EGAs, basically EGA in a box that you can install, and this could be useful for hospitals or for institutes that they want to have their own repositories, or that for legal reasons they cannot upload the data outside the country. So I think the interesting things about these EGAs is that they aim to share the metadata, and the metadata will be integrated, so we'll be able to find the different genomics phenotypic data sets. And the idea is to provide a federated authentication to this information, and to allow to retrieve data sets from the different EGAs so they can be computed in secure compute clouds. So something important as well about these use cases is that when we retrieve the data, this data is linked to the sample information that can be stored by bioRI and biosamples, and to link as well the results to the original samples. This is another slide for EGA, but maybe it's not worthwhile to explain it. It just says the same thing. So we have EGA, the local EGAs, the cloud computing, and the different centers, hospitals that could provide as well the data to EGA in a federated manner. Okay, so I wouldn't mind to stop in case that you want to ask any questions about Accelerate and the use cases. Okay, if no questions, I will continue. I'm about to finish. I know I consume already 45 minutes, so 5 minutes more than I expected, but I just got a few more slides. So this is about software development. So I really like to read these kind of things when I go to the BD2K page. So for instance, BD2K granted in June last year a few projects, and something that they said is that all the software, all the tools that they develop will be open source. I think this is very, very nice. If you read the white paper of bioCADDIE, they say something similar. So they said that the software will be freely available. I think it's very nice to make these statements, but I think probably we should go a little bit farther and have something like software development best practices. I think when, for instance, bioCADDIE says software will be freely available, it's very difficult to understand what they mean. Does it mean that it will be open source? It will be that it will be open development. It will be that the interface will be available but not the code. So I think in ELIXIR it's important to promote open source, but not just open source and open development. And I just wanted to say a little bit more about this. So we have a working group that's working in software development best practices. And the goal of this group is to raise the quality of our software and the sustainability of our software. So something that we thought that could achieve this quality and sustainability is, well, to work on best practices. And best practices is not just about coding, it's about the full software development life cycle. So the way that we want to raise quality and sustainability is with the best practices, but also an open source software policy. So in the guidelines, something that we are trying to do is to reuse existing guidelines, and we are collaborating with different domain experts. And something that is important for us as well is to be able to monitor and measure the quality in the software development. So I think this is probably the most important slide for me. I think when we say open source, something that we are trying to say in ELIXIR, we are trying to come up with a policy that says that every software should have a license. And ideally, all the software should be open from day one. And the open source shouldn't be just open source. It should be open development. And by open development means is that you have it open source and you allow as well people to contribute if people are willing to contribute to your software. I think this is one of the key things that will make our community to collaborate with us and adopt our software much easier and to make it more affordable. So this is my last slide. So something that ELIXIR is doing with BD2K, especially with Ian Fore, but also many other people from BD2K and ELIXIR, is we are organizing several 2 meetings about metadata searching. So we have one session in Barcelona, in Spain. This is 10th of March. You are all invited. So we will have a full day where we have 3 sessions, one about micro-tagging for biological entries. And this is the idea is to have a brainstorming session, exchange of ideas of how to get the data providers providing metadata to facilitate the indexing by third-party services like search engines, but also services like DDI. We will have a presentation session about federated metadata searching. So different services like, for instance, the Omics Discovery Index or like DBI Search or Fairports will be presenting. I think I'm very glad that we will have people from BD2K presenting, from ELIXIR, and also from Google. So we have the schema.org community chair that will be helping us as well to understand better how to use schema.org and metadata, and also how search engines can help us as well to index biological data. And finally, we have a hands-on, and this will be to push ideas forward, to test something, or to work on the adoption of some of the technologies that have been presented before. So very interesting expected outcomes. So ideally, we would like to come up with a project proposal for BD2K and ELIXIR, a publication of a review of existing efforts within ELIXIR and BD2K, and ideally some prototypes. So this is something that is aligned with the FORCE 2016 Searchathon that is led by Ian Fore from BD2K. And I think something that we are trying to do is to have a kind of collective outcome and try to build relationships between ELIXIR, BD2K, and bioCADDIE through this meeting. So that's all for me. I'm sorry I rushed a little bit. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I will be very happy to answer them.